Translation. Although Yuvanashva went into the forest with his 100 wives, all of them were very morose. The sages in the forest, however, being very kind to the king, began very carefully and attentively performing an Indra Yagya so that the king might have a son. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. One may enter the Vanaprastha order of life with his wife, but the Vanaprastha order means complete retirement from household life. Although King Yuvanashva retired from family life, he and his wives were always morose because he had no son. Om Gyanti Mirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Svadati Svabadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavanishvari Vrishavanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Although Yuvanashva went into the forest with his 100 wives, all of them were very morose. The sages in the forest, however, being very kind to the king, began very carefully and attentively performing an Indra Yagya so that the king might have a son. So Maharaj Yudhisthira said that this body is meant for others. So that means that human life's meant for sacrifice. As soon as we take birth in this world, we're obligated to so many things. We're obligated to our parents, we're obligated to, well, you name it. We can't live in this world without being obligated. This is the way it is. Krishna's designed it so that sacrifice has to be there. Even if we want to enjoy materially, it means sacrifice. We sacrifice a full day at work just so that we can enjoy a little bit of comfort in the evening. We have to pay for the water, we have to pay for this, pay for so many things. And so the Vedic scriptures are so arranged that if we're going to sacrifice, then it should be for some benefit. People think they're benefiting actually. They think they're getting so much benefit. But it's just what they call phantasmagoria, Prabhupada says. It's just the inclination of the mind to enjoy a certain thing, and then a little later the same thing can make us completely miserable. Have we any examples of that? No examples. This body, it's all right when it's young. It's great. Nothing goes wrong with it. Not much anyway. Maybe measles, chicken pox, a few little hiccups, but generally it's going pretty strong. And therefore, we don't really feel any miseries of the material world. Not in that respect anyway. But then as the body gets older, what happens is that you get sick and within a short time you're back to normal. But then when the body gets older, it starts to change. the diseases last longer, and eventually they don't go away. So all the sacrifice for this body, it's all meant to make this body happy. It's just going to bring us more and more trouble. So Vedas are telling us, okay, you can try to enjoy this body. And therefore Bhagavad Gita is constructed in such a way that whatever situation we're in, we can enjoy the body. It starts with the third chapter really. The second chapter is giving an overall picture of the Bhagavad Gita. Very logical Bhagavad Gita. Like when we're speaking to somebody, what do? Do we go into all the details first? People think, what the hell is he talking about? No, we tell them a whole picture. And they say, wait a minute, slow down. What about this, what about that? So it's the same, it's a conversation. So in the third chapter, the Bhagavad Gita starts to become more in depth. And Prabhupada, in every page of the Bhagavad Gita, he's talking about devotional service. So for a devotee, it's not difficult. But Bhagavad Gita is meant to be read by everybody. And so therefore, in those verses by the Supreme Lord, everybody can take advantage. And so Bhagavad Gita, what's it all about? What's the subject matters of Bhagavad Gita? I used to read, I used to come to the 18th chapter, and it said, what is the difference between, renunciation, tyag, and sannyas? I thought, why is Arjuna asking that question? And then when I read it as an overview, I could understand that Bhagavad Gita is just on about renouncing this material world, working in this material world with a spirit of renunciation. This is all Krishna's trying to get Arjuna to do, to sacrifice for a higher cause. And so, what do people sacrifice for? They sacrifice so I can enjoy. Okay, Bhagavad Gita starts off on that platform. Karma Yoga. You enjoy what you want, but follow these particular shastras. Follow these injunctions. And then later, people start to... So Karma Yoga, first, this is the third chapter. So this is like confidential knowledge. And fourth chapter is also confidential knowledge, because it's relating to the soul. So by the end of chapter 3, it starts speaking about what's stopping people from performing this simple yajna. It's not such a difficult thing, is it? We get the same benefit, we do the same things more or less. And Krishna said it's lust. And so then the fourth chapter starts explaining how we're meant to be protected from lust. So here we've got King Yuvanashva. Why is he in so much anxiety? Okay, I can't have any children. It's not very nice, but life goes on. But it's like death for a king, because he has this responsibility, he has this sacrifice. He's put into that position where he has to look after the populace. And that means that he also has to look after the future. He has to make sure that there's a king to take his place. So this is material life. There's no way we can avoid responsibility. It's just we get some temporary relief when we don't do what we're supposed to do. But then it comes round again, and we have to do it. It comes round in a much more severe way. So the king is lamenting here that what to do. Can't have children, so he's going to the forest. He's taking vanaprastha. So vanaprastha is a very difficult situation. This is spoken about in Bhagavad Gita. Anyway, we'll come back to that. We'll talk about, we're on with the Bhagavad Gita, the fourth chapter, how the kings would then protect people from lust. And they would give them, the next stage of development in a person's spiritual life is jnana, knowledge. So this transcendental knowledge. Then a person would come to, okay, this material world is not so much enjoyable. They'd come to Sakam Karma Yoga. That means they want to enjoy, but they do it for a higher cause. They have knowledge that there's something beyond this world. Maybe it's personal knowledge or impersonal knowledge, either one. And then, so then, after some time of trying to enjoy that situation, they get deeper knowledge and it becomes Nishkam Karma Yoga. So that means they don't want to enjoy the results. And then we come to chapter 5. This is all about sacrifice, by the way. This is why I'm going through the Bhagavad Gita. Just in case everybody's not quite there. And then there's a 5th chapter. He says Karma Yoga again. Karma. So, but then Prabhupada adds in brackets, in Krishna consciousness. So this knowledge then develops the knowledge of the super soul. If we read 5th chapter, it's all about the super soul. Being conscious about what we're doing is linked to a personal higher authority. And in this way, Nishkam Karma Yoga becomes fixed on the super soul. And then finally, Ashtanga Yoga. So the same, understanding the Lord in the heart through another process. So Krishna's talking to the karmis, to the jnanis, to the yogis. And then he says at the end of that chapter that the best yogi is one who tries to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in devotional life we have to have the same understanding that we're very fortunate actually because Prabhupada presented devotional service to us, and we don't have to go through all these stages. We go through these stages actually in devotional service. But the result, it's devotional service because we're following his instructions. We're engaged by the order of the spiritual master. But still the same process is there, gradual sacrifice. And if a devotee can surrender to having that outlook on life, then things become very much changed. The whole point is that because we want to enjoy, even subtly in the mind, we suffer. Even in devotional service, why do we suffer? Because the enjoying propensity is there. So anything we try to enjoy in this world, then it'll backfire. And so a devotee is gradually being weaned by Krishna and the spiritual master into the mentality that this human form of life is meant for jagya, that's all. Just, if we can settle down to this body is meant for others, it's meant for sacrifice, like Maharaj Yudhishthira explained, then we can really start to become, as the 5th chapter says, we can become blissful in devotional service. Because when we're on that platform of trying to see Krishna in the equation, he's actually there. And then we become comforted, we become reassured. And then we're looking forward to the next step in devotional service. Not necessarily looking forward to it, but because it's always a surrender. But we're not afraid of it, put it that way. So this is the Bhagavad Gita talking about... And then obviously the later chapters, the middle chapters, they talk about Gyan. They talk about pure devotional service. They start with confidential knowledge is the super soul. More confidential knowledge is the super soul. And then the middle 6 chapters are confidential knowledge, most confidential. Well, the 9th chapter and the 10th chapter together. And then right at the junction of the 9th and 10th chapter is that verse. What is it? Man mana bhavamad bhakto. That this is the most important instruction in Bhagavad Gita. We just have to surrender to Krishna. Always think of him, become his devotee, worship him, and offer our worship to him. So, and then of course the last chapters are going into the philosophy behind the process. How things are working, how the modes are working, how we're actually trapped in this world. It goes into more mind or jnana. Okay, so I think Krishna Kshetra spoke about a little bit about this, that a king has so much responsibility that the example of Maharaj Shantanu, he had 3 sons, and Vichitraviri was the oldest, and Bhishma thought he'd do Vichitraviri a good turn. Has anybody done anybody a good turn and it's finished up that, for you it's not a very good turn? So Bhishma, he kidnapped 3 princesses. And one of them, she was already attached to another man. So when Vichitraviri got to understand that, he says, I don't want to marry somebody who's thinking about somebody else, so you take her back. So Bhishma took her back. And then the other person, I think it was Shalva, he says, I'm sorry, she's been out of the house for a night and she's been with you, so I can't take her. People will just laugh at me as a king. So then Bhishma, he didn't know what to do. So this princess said, well, and she went to a spiritual master, and the spiritual master said, well, there's only one alternative, Bhishma has to marry her. And Bhishma, he'd made vows that he weren't going to marry. And so, this really upset this Mataji, Amba, wasn't it? Amba. And so it upset her so much. You've got to be careful when you cross a woman. They said there's no more, what's that saying? There's no more vengeance than, And so she meditated for the rest of that life and took birth in a situation where she could actually kill Bhishma. She was so determined. And so this is the first thing. And then, of course, eventually the Vichitraviri died. So then they're left with no offspring again. Another problem. And so Vyasadeva was called in, and he actually begot 3 offspring. One was Pandu. Pandu started to rule the kingdom. Dhritarashtra was born blind. Pandu was born pale. And Vidura, the third princess, she didn't want to even see Vyasadeva. And so she sent one of the maidservants to have union. And then Vidura was born. But Pandu, eventually, he made a mistake. And he was cursed. And he died. So then we're still left with no heir to the throne. And so then we have the whole story of how Kunti gave birth to the Pandavas through the demigods. Eventually the demigods had to come to the rescue. And so it goes on and on. That, when we come to this world, even if we think we're in a good... When this world, what does everybody want to be when they're young? I remember I used to want... I thought it'd be really nice to be the king. Then I'd have everything laid on a plate. No problems. No problems. Look at the problems here. Krishna Chaitanya. And so it goes on. We look in the Bhagavatam, there's a pious king like King Anga. If you're pious, there's no problem. Who's born to King Anga? How did it happen? King Vena, one of the most cruelest kings that was ever born. And so he just gave up. He went to the forest. And then we have the reverse. There's... who was it? Hiranyakashipu. He wants a demon son, but he gets Prahlad Maharaj. So this is... so Bhagavan, but even Srimad Bhagavatam is giving information, practical information, or applied knowledge, which Srimad Bhagavad Gita is giving us. It gives us practical understanding in the lives of devotees, what to avoid in this material world. And ultimately it ends in the 10th chapter, which is just complete pure devotional service, is the only answer. So we have to do our duty, we have to perform our particular sacrifice. And what's the biggest sacrifice now? It's the Sankirtan Yajna. But it is a sacrifice. Not many people want to do Sankirtan. It's like we're in the Sankirtan movement, but to connect ourselves to the distribution of the holy name and the distribution of books, it's a big sacrifice. And what does the future of this? What kind of sacrifice does the future of this movement rely on? This is a good one. Which one? It's the Vivaha Yajna, the marriage sacrifice. 90% of devotees will get married, and nearly 90% won't stay married where things are going anyway. But this is this is not helping the Sankirtan movement one bit. This sacrifice. I've seen Grihastha life, close quarters, and it's tough. There's the kids to look after, the wife to look after. You've got to earn a living. You've got to try and give donations to the temple, and on top of that, you've got to try and chant your rounds. It's very difficult. But somehow or other, we have to make that situation work, because I used to go door to door in Manchester distributing books, and sometimes people took an interest and they would invite you in, and they'd ask you about, and they're really interested in the philosophy. But when they saw your way of life, you could see that they started to back off. Wait a minute, what about me? I'm in family life. I've got a job. I've got kids. It's all right for him. Brahmachari comes in, it's like somebody from another planet as far as he's concerned. And so it dawned on me that, it's actually, this is a yajna for the grihasthas. This is a perfect yajna. You don't have to, it's not a big thing to, once a week to just nip down the street or go to the next village if you're a bit shy and do a few books door to door. Part of the Sankirtan yajna. But anyway, starting to take hold a little bit, starting to become more prominent. But main thing is that our first yajna is to learn how to live, have a balanced life, so that we can fit these things in. Balance is there. To live in this world, we have to be balanced, not just as a devotee, and especially as a devotee. We have to balance our life so that we can fit these things in. And usually, what does it mean? Any experienced devotee realizes that after some time, the material side has to come down. The material necessities has to come down. Not necessarily the things that we own, but the use of them and our attachment to them. And then naturally we start to make time for the spiritual side. And then what happens when we make time for the spiritual side? The material side is taken care of. Krishna promises in Bhagavad Gita. So, anyway, we're talking about sacrifice. One has to know how to sacrifice. So it says here that the king or the sages, they very carefully and attentively perform the Indra Yajna. And so Prabhupada says in the Nectar of Instruction, he gives us a clue where any difficulty in devotional service lies. In the 7th verse, he talks about chanting the holy name with care and attention. He says if we chant this holy name with care and attention, we focus on that, he says then we get a strong taste for hearing the holy name. He says then avidya, the disease of the heart, the material attraction is destroyed at the root. So then we can actually, when we focus on the holy name, then everything becomes possible. I was going to speak a bit about Vanaprastha, but there's not so much time. But anyway, Bhagavatam explains Vanaprastha in the 12th chapter. But it's not really meant for this age, I don't think. Maybe it's talking about how we don't wash, we don't brush his teeth, we don't cut his hair, and you don't cut your nails. Wouldn't be very good for preaching, would it? Excuse me, plug. But Vanaprastha, what's Vanaprastha mean in this age? It means gradually, what we've been talking about, gradually increasing the sacrifice, gradually letting go. If we let go without wife or with wife, we start letting go. We're just living together, and we're increasing our spiritual life. And we're simplifying life. simplifying the eatable, simplifying everything. The best way to simplify life is to engage in this Sankirtan Yajna. Everything becomes very simple when we put that as prominent. So, anyway, today is the appearance day of Sri Virabhadra. And I thought, who's Sri Virabhadra? And then I looked on the folio, and I realised that although I've read Chaitanya Chaitamrita, I didn't really read it, because Sri Virabhadra is the son of, well, he says son, but he's the son of Lord Nityananda. And from this, it says that Advaitacharya, he had 6 sons. 3 of them went askew. They went away from devotional service. And anyway, there's no lineage from Nityananda. Lord Chaitanya never had offspring. There's no lineage from Lord Chaitanya. Why? Because he knew that in this age people would start creating a seminal disciplic succession, keep it in the family. Sometimes we have similar sort of things happening now, but you know what I mean. So this causes a big disturbance. It means that the quality, instead of being disciplic, instead of the Brahmins being judged on quality, it's judged on caste, and so this spoils the whole thing. And in Lord Nityananda's line, they say that Virabhadra had 2 sons, and then so forth. They had sons all the way down, and so they call them the Nityananda Vamsa, and they claim that they're the only ones who have a right to practice devotional service. They're the only ones who are okay for being spiritual masters. So this is what happened, just 1 son, and they caused so much problem. And so Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he came and he defeated that argument in the Jaivadam and Bhakti-Rasamrita Sindhu. And so, actually, it explains in the Chaitanya Chaitamrita that this Virabhadra, the son of Nityananda, is not actually his son. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's an expansion of Shiradakashaya Vishnu. And Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur says, even if they call him a son, he analysed the situation. He says, these 2 sons of Virabhadra, actually they can't be his sons, just by the names and the whole situation. So he defeated that also. So we have to be very careful about that we don't get caught up in keeping it in the family, but we start to give it to everybody. Okay, we can stop there. Shri Virabhadra ki jai. Do we have questions, or is it? We can have questions, can we?